Good times in Miami as J-Lo and Mark Anthony perform for Hillary Clinton. And we are live in Wilton Manors, where Clinton will appear soon and certainly voice support for gay rights. But what about those FBI probe of more emails?
One of South Florida's most competitive state Senate races is also one of the most contentious, and the candidates are right here live to debate.
I'm criticizing you for not having the courage,
so finally,
Senator.
Patrick Murphy agrees
you
with
have
Donald
no
Trump
backbone.
The U.S. Senate candidates tangle in their final debate. Marco Rubio holds a small lead in the polls, but is it enough? We will take it to the roundtable.
Good morning. So glad you could be with us this morning. 9 days to Election Day. More than a third of the state's votes already cast in early and mail-in voting.
We certainly have some key races we want to look at today, and we're going to start with the one for the Florida Senate in District 37. It is a newly drawn district. It stretches from downtown Miami to Cutler Bay. It includes Key Biscayne, Coral Gables, and pretty much the southern half, I believe, of Miami Beach. I'm not sure that that is the right map there, but we'll get the right map for you.
Mid-Central and South Miami-Dade, and the fight to represent it between two well-known state lawmakers has become feisty and expensive. Miguel
Diaz de la Portilla has served in the state Senate for the last 6 years. Now he is running. He is the Republican candidate in the newly drawn 37th Senate District. He is a former Miami-Dade County Commissioner and a lawyer.
Jose Javier Rodriguez is also a lawyer and for the past 4 years has represented District 112 in the Florida House of Representatives. He served in the Peace Corps after college, and he is the Democratic candidate. And good morning to everybody. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to have you come in. Well, let me say at the outset that I know both of you. I respect you. Think you have solid records of accomplishment. And so I have to say, why has this race devolved into a mudfest where at least your third-party surrogates are running these really awful ads about each other? We're going to see some of them in a minute, but first, Representative, why has it become so low?
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing us on, and thank you for giving me a chance to explain why it is that I want to continue fighting for the communities I currently represent in the Florida Senate. And I think when you look at, a lot of the ads, from my vantage point, it's been really important to counter the attacks that Portilla has been leveling against me. All of them, in my view, fall into the category of a smokescreen. That is, the Portilla camp is attacking me for things that they know they're vulnerable on, right? For his bad record. And if you look at the ads, I know a lot of people have been getting the mailers, have been seeing the TV commercials. They're not cited. They're not very clear exactly what it is. And if you look at, I stand by, our communications, which lay out the serious conflict of interest that there is in this race when Portilla is a for-profit lobbyist.
We're going to see those in a few minutes. But, Senator, you also have had ads on the air by third-party candidates. Can I say that you both were here in March, the day before you announced as his opposition, and were very cordial and gracious and friendly and collegiate. Your campaign do you support these ads that are so negative?
Well, let me tell you, let's put it in perspective here. As you know, Glenna, we were here right after session, and Mr. Rodriguez had already intended to run against me. He didn't tell you before he came on the show. He didn't tell me before he came on the show. And then he tried to launch a sneak attack on me during that show. That didn't go well for him. And so he started the campaign with a bunch of negative ads paid by dark money groups. In fact, one individual alone, Chris Findlater, has put in about $600,000 of his money to buy influence with Mr. Rodriguez. $2 million in dark money has gone into Rodriguez's campaign, and he started back in February with attacks. Now, of course, we've had to defend ourselves. We didn't hit back until September, but we had to hit back, and we had to hit back with the truth. And the truth is that Mr. Rodriguez is perhaps the most ineffective legislator that we have in Tallahassee. He's passed one bill in 4 years. He tries to take credit for other people's work by filing one-page co-sponsorship forms and tries to steal credit from others. That's called stolen glory. It's a form of stolen valor. Right. It's dishonest, just like his campaign is.
Let's give Mr. Rodriguez a chance to respond to all of that.
Thank you for the chance to respond. There's two issues there. One, members of the public can go online and see who it is that's donating to my campaign and to Portilla's campaign. He has raised twice as much money as I have. And if you look at who the contributors are, the overwhelming majority of my donors are in Miami-Dade. And less than $1 in $3 that he's raised in his campaign are from Miami-Dade. So you all figure out exactly which candidate is homegrown and based here.
Well,
and I
as
want
long
to
as-
talk, I want to talk
inaccurate.
about my record
That-
because
that is
he makes a
inaccurate,
false
Michael.
claim, which he's repeated. And I just want to
Truth.
very briefly explain exactly how the legislative process works. It is a team environment. You have to work with your colleagues, whether you agree with them or not, in order to get things done. I'll give 3 very brief examples. Number 1, just this last session, Kathleen Pasadomo and I passed 931. That's a bill protecting homeowners from citizens' property insurance. I filed the bill, she filed the bill, we got together and said, hey, let's do it together. By House rules, we're both the sponsor, the Speaker approves it. Another bill I filed in my own name and got it passed, House Bill 101. This is something you can look up online. It's a bill that helps the state attorneys go after repeat predators and domestic violence. And the final thing that I'll say is the other way that things get passed and that I do take credit for are pieces of legislation that in the final step get pulled into larger packages. I worked on and drafted with my own hand a reform of our economic development system, which in my first year went through all committees and at the very last stop got put into
Representative,
another bill.
let me jump in here. Let's get specific here. The accusation from Senator Diaz-Lula Portilla is that dark money from a fellow who I believe you said his name is Chris Findlater? Findlater. Has donated an enormous amount, maybe $2 million. In fact, the ad, which we're going to see in a minute, I think it says a dark money source, one person, an insurance executive, has put in $2 million. Did this person do that?
Again, what's publicly available, what I sign off on is what comes from my campaign and what the Democratic Party pays for. The group that he's mentioning has also attacked Democrats, so I'm not exactly sure what the link is.
Yeah.
And I
Well,
want to be
is
clear.
it dark money?
I
I
want to
mean,
be
is
clear.
it
This
money
gentleman,
that's not identified?
This gentleman Findlater, I don't know a whole lot about him, but I know he's not an insurance tycoon. This guy
Let
started
me jump
a
in
website.
here. Chris Findlater is the founder of a company called NetQuote,
That's right, insurance.
who is an insurance middleman.
Correct.
What's wrong with that?
And there's nothing wrong with being an insurance. In fact, you know, that's a business just like any other. But what is wrong is that you have over $2 million of dark money. This is money where you can't trace exactly who the contributors are and what the expenditures are.
Of course, but it's perfectly legal.
Oh no,
as detestable as it may be.
It's detestable, but it's dishonest. And what is particularly dishonest is that most of that money is coming from lobbyists. It's coming from insurance interests. $600,000 alone from one particular individual who's buying influence, all to his benefit. It inures to his benefit.
Buying
now he
influence
tries to.
how? What has been the pay to play? Can you
Well,
detail
I
that?
think the pay to play is that, you know, all of a sudden an insurance tycoon gives $600,000. He's raised over $2 million from insurance interest, and our insurance rates go up.
Well,
and
Glenn,
he talks
you're
about
hitting on
lobbyists,
exactly
but here's
the
the
right point.
interesting thing.
Give him an opportunity to respond. I mean, are you in the pocket of these insurance
Absolutely
interests?
not. And-
That's the accusation.
And Glenn and Michael, you're hitting on exactly the point that's so deceptive about this ad. I have a 100% record in favor of consumers. I just told you we got a bill passed 931. You can look it up that protects policyholders who have citizens' property insurance. If you listen to the ad, what it says is that we failed to stop something. It doesn't say I ever supported something. So if you listen to the ad itself doesn't refute that I have a 100% record. And when I say smokescreen, what's behind the smokescreen is something that Portilla actually supported. Senate Bill 408. It passed. Portilla supported it. The other Republicans in Miami-Dade, Garcia and Flores, did not. The Sun Sentinel predicted that that bill would end up increasing our insurance rates, and it did. And so because of that, he's trying to throw up a smokescreen.
That was a fraud bill, was it not?
That's right. It was an anti-fraud bill, Glenn, and that's a very good question.
That had a double-dipping provision in it.
And he wasn't there in the legislature, so he probably doesn't understand the bill very well. What that was a consumer protection bill. What that bill did was it said insurance companies just couldn't raise your rate. They had to file and get approved by OIR first before they could just raise your rate and get retroactive approval. It said insurance companies had to process claims and pay claims for consumers within 90 days. It was a consumer protection bill. But here's the deal. The Florida Justice Association named me Insurance Consumer Champion of the Year. The Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters just recognized me as Legislator of the Year. These are two pro-consumer entities, and they both recognized me as a champion for consumers, insurance consumers. Mr. Rodriguez here is basically a lobbyist. He's worked as a lobbyist in Tallahassee. He's beholden to special interests, particularly insurance.
He's completely making this up.
Completely. No, I have it right
This
here.
is the first time I've ever heard of this.
Hold on.
Yeah, you were a registered lobbyist in 2011.
Did you ever register as a lobbyist in Tallahassee?
It's fantastic that he's bringing this up. I was a legal aid lawyer for most of my legal career. I lobbied in Tallahassee one day, and I'll tell you what it was. It was Legal Aid Day on the Capitol. As a legal aid lawyer, we're paid a salary. It's a nonprofit.
A small salary.
It's a small salary. And what Legal Aid Day was, there are other organizations that, because of their funding structure, they can't do what we do. And what we did is, there were two topics. One of them had to do with health insurance for extremely disabled people, and the other one had to do with children's health care, both health care issues. And our job was to bring other legal services providers and their clients, elderly and sick people, to Tallahassee one day. One day. That's exactly right. And let's talk about
so now let's talk a little bit about this.
He's a for-profit professional lobbyist.
No, I'm a practicing attorney. You have a no-show job in a Broward personal injury law firm. You know what I have here? I'll tell you what I have here.
This is 10 days ago.
That's called a public hearing representing clients and practicing law. You get paid just because you're a politician. You're a career politician. You were driven here by a lobbyist today, Christian Ulvert, who is a lobbyist. Your biggest sugar daddy is an insurance tycoon.
When you talk over each other, I think it's almost impossible.
Michael, the public needs to understand that you have somebody here who has a no-show job in a Broward law firm that does personal injury. Okay, I'm a working attorney. I've been a practicing lawyer for 29 years in Miami-Dade County. And by the way, I'm AV rated by the Martindale-Hubbell peer rating system, which means the highest level of skill and the highest level of ethics. Mr. Rodriguez isn't even rated because he doesn't practice law, and he's passed one bill in 4 years.
We need
one
to
bill
take,
in 4 years.
If you watch that clock right there, we need to take a break right now.
Then you'll get your chance to respond.
Please. Stay with us. And if you are watching, you have just seen one of the ads for Senate seat district number 37 in Florida that has become so contentious. And we are here with Miguel Diaz de la Portilla, Jose Javier Rodriguez vying for that seat. And when we left the first segment, we left off, you were going to respond to some allegations that Senator Diaz de la Portilla made.
There are 3 points that I would make. Again, this is another smokescreen. We have been talking about his for-profit lobbying, professional lobbying. And he says that I have a no-show job. The Miami Herald called me to debunk this, and they asked me to send them some records. They called me back a couple hours later saying they went on court filings for the federal and state courts. They actually didn't need to debunk it because it was obvious that I'm a practicing attorney. Second point, who are my clients? They're injured people. They're low-wage workers who've been shafted on the job. That's the legal work that I do. My clients do not lobby the state. They need someone fighting for them against powerful interests. That's what I do for a living. That's also what I do for my constituents in Tallahassee. And by contrast, again, it's a smokescreen because the photo I just showed, Portilla's clients are developers, red light cameras, FP&L, for-profit charter schools. That has a real impact on us.
Those are all legitimate businesses.
They're legitimate businesses
that
need
hire an advocate.
Yeah,
on their
they can hire an advocate. It just shouldn't be a legislator. It shouldn't be our legislator because they lobby in Tallahassee.
No,
they can't buy him dinner in Tallahassee because that would violate the lobbying ban. But they can hire his company.
Let me respond to that. As you know, Michael, and in fact, before we went on the air, we were talking about some of the people I represent. I represent Rabbi Yossi Harlig, who runs the Friendship Circle in Pinecrest and Kendall. The Chabad. It's for the Chabad of Kendall, and they do wonderful community work. Typically, these are landowners and property owners who have a petition before local government. It has nothing to do with what I do in Tallahassee or what the legislature does. That's totally irrelevant, and Rodriguez knows it's irrelevant.
Except for the important clients I just mentioned.
No, and here's the deal. You talk
about
charter
record
schools.
Matches theirs.
Well, let me tell you what your voting record is. Your voting record is your one bill in 4 years, you try to steal credit for somebody else's work, and actually in the law firm what you're doing is you're signing on to pleadings similar to what you're doing in Tallahassee. You're basically not doing work and taking credit for somebody else's work, and that's very dishonest, just like your ads, just like your campaign.
We've talked about
you're one of the
law
most
practice. I'm very
feckless
proud of the work that I've done.
legislators in Tallahassee.
And listen,
you're
I'm very
recognized
proud
for
of
your
the work that I've
ineffectiveness.
done.
That's what you're
And
recognized
again,
for.
Response?
I went into detail and explained how it is that we get laws passed. In the first category that I described, bills that I have under my own name, there's 3 bills that I have filed and passed under my own name. There's 3 others that I have passed working with one of my colleagues, which again is how we get things done in Tallahassee.
So it's collegial.
It
should be collegial.
And there's 5 other bills at least that again I have written and worked on with my own hand that are now law.
Michael and
If
Glenn,
it's a
I have my own
complete
prop here.
falsity,
Okay, well,
myfloridahouse.gov. Voters can go
Jose,
on
hold-
and look at
hold
it
on.
themselves.
And
Hold
so
on,
what they
just
can
to-
do,
hold
if I
on,
may
let's-
just respond
before
to
we,
that.
No,
I have my own prop, Michael. He showed his
all
prop.
right,
I'd like to show
all right,
mine.
you'll
Is
get
that
your
okay?
maybe later, but right now I have a legitimate issue I want to hear you both out on, and that is Everglades restoration and taking land out of the Everglades agricultural area south of Lake Okeechobee. As the incoming Senate President, Joe Negron of Stewart, says he wants to take up to 60,000 acres, make it into reservoirs so that lake water coming out of the lake is cleansed and then sent south into the Everglades. Now, Representative Rodriguez, is that something you as a senator would support?
Unequivocally, I have been on record during the last legislative session before the latest algae bloom that's affected so many parts of the state. I would say 2 things. Mark Pafford and I are the only 2 legislators.
He's a state representative.
He's another state representative. He's the only 2 legislators in the entire state who fought a bad rewrite of water policy. All the environmental groups and scientists that looked at it said this is over the long term bad for environment. The second thing I would mention,
water bill that was
the water
adopted.
bill that passed, and I think that that has an impact on Everglades restoration. And when we're talking about Everglades restoration, it's extremely important. And the other thing that I would mention is, again, Mark Pafford and I were the only ones during session, we had a map of the state showing the parcel of land that we need to purchase in order to send water south, clean it, and restore the water flow that affects us everywhere from Florida Bay to the Kissimmee River Basin.
Right.
And so we've been the only ones on record
All right, so
fighting
you're on
for
record.
this.
Senator, what about you?
I support Joe Negron's position. I think we have a great Senate president. I have a fantastic working relationship with him. When reelected, I expect to be in a leadership position, so I'll be able to continue doing what I've been doing and what Representative Rodriguez hasn't been able to do, which is bring home dollars for projects that are important to our community, money for FIU, money for Miami-Dade College, $1 billion for transportation infrastructure, yes, money for the environment. By the way, Rodriguez talks a good game, but in 2015, he voted against $136 million for Everglades restoration. So what you see here is somebody who talks a good game, but at the end of the day, he votes against the public interest. He doesn't get any legislation passed. He doesn't bring home 1 penny for anything that's important to anybody down here, and I do. And that's the difference. The difference is somebody who can actually get the job done and somebody who talks about doing the job.
Yeah.
2 points that I'll make in response. Again, another smokescreen. And if you read the Miami Herald articles about this race, you'll see he's constantly attacking me for voting against the budget until the very last one. The reason is because there's not enough funding for Medicaid expansion, for our public schools, and for the environment. Until we negotiated things, and I led, along with my colleagues on the Democratic side, for more public school funding.
Right.
And I think the other point...
Let's point out that you, as a Democrat, are in the minority in the State House of Representatives.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to accomplish much when you're in the minority.
I totally disagree. The $400 million we got in added money for local schools, which is the reason why I voted for the budget finally this time, was something we had worked doggedly on for 4 years. I'm the ranking Democrat on the Finance and Tax Committee where these things are negotiated. For 4 years, worked very hard. And at the final measure, what it came down to was the fact that Democrats were going to support the budget this year. We voted unanimously for the budget for the first time in my memory, and the reason was because of this deal we negotiated, and I was there negotiating it. So please don't tell me Democrats are not effective.
No,
and
I said
this year with the new Senate maps, Democrats can take more seats. That's why this is more
in the
important.
minority, it is much harder to get things done as opposed to you are in the majority in the state Senate, and you
Correct. Correct, Michael, but I haven't been in leadership until the last 2 years where I chaired the Judiciary Committee and killed the bad gun bills, open carry and campus carry and what have you.
We got to that.
Yeah, but Representative Rodriguez hasn't been, there's no such thing as ranking Democrat, in the state legislature. I think he's talking about Washington, and he's very partisan. He doesn't work well with others. He's at the wrong end of a lot of 115 to 5 votes.
That's not what you said in March, may I just say. That is not what you said in March.
No, that's exactly what I said in March.
And it's interesting.
That's exactly what I said in March. That's exactly what I said in March.
Not at this table.
Yeah, I did, actually.
Marco Rubio, when he was Speaker, created
I'm bipartisan
the ranking
in what I
member
do.
position, so he should know very well. And I think, it's important to talk. I mean, you mentioned the gun bills, and one of the things, what he was upset about when we came on earlier this year was calling him out, not for his NRA record up until this year, but his votes this year. He voted for a very dangerous provision that would have made it more difficult for prosecutors to enforce the stand your ground, right? And also, when Republicans and Democrats joined together in calling for a special session after the Pulse shootings, he abstained. He was one of the few who didn't vote at all.
That's another publicity stunt. That's another publicity stunt. Mr. Rodriguez.
It's not a publicity
Mr.
stunt.
Rodriguez is very good at having publicity stunts and a lot of symbolic acts and what have you, but nothing, no beef. Like the old commercial, where's the beef? There's none with Rodriguez. But let me tell you about common sense gun laws. Every town for gun safety, the Bloomberg Group, is endorsing me, not Rodriguez. The Wright family, whose son Jerry was killed at the Pulse nightclub, is endorsing me, not Rodriguez. They wouldn't be endorsing me if I were,
Mr. Rodriguez has plenty of endorsements. You both do. Some very estimable groups are both endorsing you. I think you got the Miami Herald endorsement, so
I've got community newspapers, United Teachers of Dade.
And there is one that endorsed you both as a co-endorsement.
Say Dade endorsed us both.
Yeah. And the statewide teachers endorsed me. Even though the local teachers had endorsed my opponent. And the main reason they did that is because they look at our voting record for public education.
No, the main reason they did that was that he tried to get the United Teachers of Dade to endorse him. They didn't. They endorsed me instead. And so he did a little end run and talked to 3 lobbyists in Tallahassee and lobbied for an NPA
endorsement. We could go on here quite a while, but we are out of time. I want to thank you both for coming in. Very lively, shall we say.
Pleasure to be here,
debate.
Michael.
Thank you.
9 days.
And same to you, Glenna. Great to see you
very
again.
much. All right. Stay tuned. When we come back, yes, it's going to be time for the roundtable.
Boy, do we have a lot to talk about from this week, including, of course, the FBI's decision to reopen the investigation into Hillary Clinton emails.
It means it is time for the Powerhouse Roundtable. Boy, we've got a good one for you today. Mark Caputo is a Roundtable regular. Welcome back, Mark. Florida correspondent for Politico and writes the daily Political Florida Playbook, which I get in my email every morning. Glad to do so. Marley Cancio is an attorney in Miami and the firm that bears her name, also an activist in Republican Party politics. And today she's wearing her Trump jewelry there.
We'll show that, right?
And we're also glad to welcome back H.T. Smith, veteran Miami attorney, professor of law at Florida International University. Good morning to you all.
So we will get on Twitter soon. I'm working on that.
Okay. I told you T is for Twitterless.
H.T. Smith, you are, you're one of 2 attorneys here. I want to hear from you both, but let's begin with FBI Director Comey's decision on Friday to send this letter, somewhat vague letter to Congress saying we're reopening the email case of Secretary Clinton.
One of the most shameful things that any person in that position has ever done. It was unprecedented, it was unprofessional, and it is unsupported by policy, by law, or the legal professionals in the Justice Department. The Attorney General warned him not to do it. The Assistant Attorney General warned him not to do it. And then he sent out something saying, I can't say whether or not this is something that is important, whether or not this is significant. But what he responded was with the most significant thing he could possibly do: drop a bomb in the middle of an election 11 days before.
He said it may have pertinent information. That was the phrase, pertinent information.
But at the time he sent it out, he specifically said he cannot say that it's significant, but I'm going to do something significant in response to it. That is unprofessional and unsupported.
So at this point, it is a political bombshell, maybe, but it may be a legal nothing, right?
It has to be something. I think it was a major CYA that he did, knowing that he was going to be in trouble one way or the other. He had to make the disclosure. Now, the FBI in New York was investigating Weiner's sexting allegations. They found it, they sent it to DC. When that came over there, they're like, whoa, we really need to disclose this information. Now, they need authorization from the Justice Department to even read the emails, because some of the classification levels are higher than even the FBI agents investigating could not even read those email messages. So I think it is significant. I don't think if it was not significant, this would have come up.
But we don't even know that yet.
But Mara Lee is a very fine lawyer. But if she called the FBI and she said who she is, I'm a lawyer, I represent H.T. Smith, are you investigating him?
No.
They would tell him,
correct.
We cannot confirm
that is
nor
correct.
deny that there's an investigation. Don't call back here again.
So,
that
Mark,
is correct.
What do we know, and when do we know it? What do we know about this?
Everything
That's
I know,
factual.
everything I know about the case so far, I read in Franz Kafka. You know, a letter was sent about some emails that may or may not matter. You know, part of me thinks, sure, the FBI director stepped over the line. But at the same time, Hillary Clinton's entire political career has been characterized by needless secrecy and a lack of transparency. And it's just difficult for me to have too much sympathy for her when it looks like chickens are coming home to roost.
So
but we have to make sure that the law is applied equally.
But it's not.
But it's not. It's not.
It has nothing to do with whether we have sympathy, whether we like a person or not.
Fair enough.
Today is Hillary Clinton, tomorrow is Mark Caputo. And I'll fight just as hard for Mark Caputo to be treated fairly as I would for Donald Trump.
By the way, I was framed. It wasn't me. I have an alibi. I was elsewhere.
That we can win that case.
I just historically, let me point out that in the Southern District of Florida, the U.S. Attorney declined to indict or charge David Rivera twice
in separate cases.
Part of the reason I believe that the U.S. Attorney didn't was because it was close to an election. And it is the policy of the DOJ not to go after public figures, elected
But I think that
officials
is precisely why
candidates.
Hillary was not indicted 3 months ago. And that's when the Democrats were saying, oh, well, he did his job. He's wonderful. Comey's great. And so now when he just brings this information and he's just making a disclosure of what was found. Huma Abedin was interviewed. She was deposed. She said, yes, I used to send emails from the State Department to my personal account because it was easier to print. The problem is that if the emails are classified, which apparently now they've discovered, that is what's under question.
The funniest thing I saw on Twitter was Huma Abedin is, of course, Anthony Weiner's wife. No. Somebody had somebody posted the best thing about this is finding out that she shared a laptop with him, which I thought was pretty funny, considering what he's under investigation for.
If I may back the thing, I agree with HT that making this disclosure in this way just is weird, and it does seem partisan. But the fact that they're looking at him, no problem. Back to David Rivera, I think there's a missing piece. Thomas J. Mulvihill is the attorney, the U.S. attorney in Florida, who investigated both cases against David Rivera and declined to prosecute, despite, from what we understand, the latter, a load of information that showed that he allegedly participated in a campaign finance scheme. Part of the problem is the DOJ has terrible lawyers like Thomas J. Mulvihill who will not prosecute cases that are winnable, but they figure, you know what, we might lose it, and I'm too scared to actually do my job. So he sits there and he does nothing.
As an unindicted co-conspirator.
He didn't.
Yeah, well, Judge Scola, Robert Scola, in open court, I was there,
him to do it.
Forced Mulvihill, because Mulvihill would only say the unindicted co-conspirator. Judge Scola said Mr. Mulvihill named the unindicted co-conspirator.
But the only person under investigation by the FBI right now is Hillary Clinton.
Fair enough.
Let's go back.
I was just ripping on Thomas J. Mulvihill. I think he's a terrible U.S. attorney, and sometimes he tries to have a higher
He needs to
position.
be here in defense of himself before we go there.
Let's move on to what is going on in Florida, because today there is a new NBC News Marist poll that came out, and Mark, it's got Clinton 45, Trump 44. Just last week, she was up in Florida by what, 6 or 7 points?
I must admit, I haven't seen that. There's like a poll a day. Is that a Florida or a?
It's a Florida poll.
Well, polls are tightening. These things happen toward the end of the election season. The problem that Donald Trump has had is he's been so far behind in Florida while early and absentee voting has been going on. So he's been losing a lot of votes. So far, about 3.5 million people have already voted in Florida. We might be looking at 9, 10 million who are going to vote.
So do you think that this announcement, this new email announcement, certainly has an effect on those daily polls?
Yeah, but how much of an effect? There's 6 Florida polls. 3 have Clinton ahead, 2 have Trump ahead, 1 is tied, and the Real Clear Politics average is 0.2%. This is a definition of a toss-up. Yeah. I think it's going to come down to ground game. And I think I know
she's got the better ground game. That's
does
for sure.
she?
Well, I think
that's
so.
a good question.
Yes.
So we've been waiting all week because early in-person voting is where Democrats dominate. Republicans dominate at casting absentee ballots by mail.
Right.
But what we found is that the first weekend day, yesterday, Saturday, of early in-person voting, the Democrats did not surpass the Republicans in total ballots cast. They stayed home.
Yes,
in
because we vote on Sunday.
Yeah.
Hold on.
And today is souls to the polls.
No. In 2012, the first day of early in-person voting was on a Saturday. The Democrats built up a 35,000 margin. This year, they built up a 3,500
Yeah, but it's
margin.
hard to compare apples to oranges because of the days, you know.
I'm comparing the first day of
I know,
early voting.
but
race
also
is
it was
so
raining
different.
yesterday. It was pouring yesterday.
Now we're
But
talking
I'm
weather
optimistic.
reports.
I'm
Don't
optimistic.
let rain interfere with your commitment to democracy.
Well, I'm happy that the people watching cannot see her beautiful Trump signature
let's
because
see it.
that might be
Let's
worth
see it.
30 or 40 votes. So I'm going to get most of. I can assure
Trump
you.
2016.
I can assure you, in the black community, there is a tremendous ground game, and I can't
see it-
wait.
we'll see it
when we come-
Sunday.
that's right. When we come back here,
Yeah.
I'm going to talk to Mark, and he's going to tell us the numbers. I'm there. I don't know about the other communities. We are voting. in heavy
Professor,
numbers.
there's a lot of black friends of mine voting for Mr. Trump, and I'm very happy about that. So I hope they go out and vote today after church.
hopefully you don't have
because
many
he's
black
a pro-life
friends.
candidate, and I believe that he believes in religious liberties, and I think he's going to get a lot of votes.
And all of that's good, but the number one thing I'm concerned about is giving a man who's a bully with thin skin the nuclear codes. That's very, very
All right,
serious.
Mara Lee, we'll give you a chance to respond to that when we come back, but we're going to take a break from the roundtable. Don't go away. Live in the studio this morning, we are in the midst of the roundtable with Mara Lee Cancio, Mark Caputo, H.T. Smith. Mara Lee, before we took that break, H.T. was saying he doesn't think Donald Trump is fit to be president. I want to give you a chance to say why you think he is.
Well, because I don't think that Hillary's fit to be president. I think that his economic policies, his ideas are much better for this country. The way that he want to create 25 million jobs over 10 years, how he want to reduce
But he
the
hasn't been
corporate
specific
taxes.
about so
Well, they're
much
pretty
of that.
specific. If you go to the DonaldJTrump.com website, they're very specific ideas. And he has been very clear. Unfortunately, he doesn't get the coverage sometimes when he gives his ideas and he says one little thing that everybody's going to be talking about.
Unfortunately, that one little thing is usually like a big thing.
It's
now.
not a big thing. It is not a big thing at all. Last week he gave a little speech at Gettysburg that was amazing. But he also said, you know, after this is done, I'm going to sue the people that, and as an attorney, you know, he's
hold on,
entitled.
he's not
to
a-
that.
He did that for the purpose of scaring
not a
away.
politician.
He did,
I
understand,
he-
but that's
he did it. Excuse
politician.
me. He did it to scare away other women from coming
No.
forward.
But
let
they
me tell you
still came
something.
forward. A woman still
At
came
least
forward
one
the
came
next
forward.
day.
But I'll bet you there are many more who didn't come forward. The health care plan that Donald Trump has, the a plan on
To repeal Obamacare. To
that
repeal
plan,
Obamacare.
the job plan, the other plans mean nothing.
Of course they
if
mean
there's
something.
a nuclear war, which
Don't
is
scare
life.
people,
Don't scare
Professor.
people.
Don't scare people
What do you
because
mean
that
don't
is
scare
not
people?
true. A guy that does not even drink an
He
ounce
said-
of alcohol,
Well-
a guy that has complete control
Okay,
over.
so no alcohol.
Look at his family.
and
Look at
so-
his family.
completely,
No.
completely sober. He said, "What purpose is there to have nuclear weapons if you don't use them?" And he was completely sober when he said that.
Yeah,
All right, let's
Maybe
let's,
he should drink.
Can I slide in a quick question about early voting?
maybe not.
Of a third of this state has already voted. And part two, there are 600,000 NPAs, not Democrats, not Republicans, because that's a very close vote right now. 600,000
No party
NPAs.
affiliation
What
voters.
do we expect from them in
Well,
Florida?
so far, what we've seen in the early vote and absentee ballot casters is though NPAs, no party affiliation voters, are disproportionately Hispanic, the voters are disproportionately white and elderly. Now, if you just look at demographics, age and race, that fits the profile more of a Trump voter than a Clinton voter.
So there are no millennial numbers?
The millennial
then?
numbers are low. Now, they are also known as kind of late voters, you know, put it off to the last day.
They sleep late anyway. Every
Exactly.
day.
Well, you know, even you procrastinate as an adult.
Yeah, but I think that the amendment about the marijuana is going to motivate some of them to go
It
out and
might.
vote, because
might.
I think that took Rick Scott over the edge when a lot of young people went and voted in favor of that, of the marijuana bill, and voted for Rick Scott.
Yeah, can I
don't know.
Since you brought up the governor, can I just point out that in every other state that I know of where there are contentious congressional or Senate races, the governor has taken a position, is out there, is visible. Where is Rick Scott? I mean, he and Marco Rubio apparently really don't get along. Rubio campaigned with him when he ran for re-election, but Rick Scott is just MIA.
He's not MIA. He's doing his job. He's
No,
creating
no,
jobs
he's-
for the state of
but
Florida.
other
He's not
governors,
campaigning.
Marley,
he's
not
doing a good
campaigning.
job.
I'm not criticizing the job he's doing. I'm saying as a political force, he's not exerting any influence
Well,
on this
that's
election.
because Rick Scott, while certainly he's in charge of Florida government and the unemployment rate has dropped, and you can give him all of that stuff or argue it if you wish, the reality is that Rick Scott's not a guy who brings you votes on the campaign trail. He just doesn't. Marco Rubio is very thankful, probably, that Rick Scott is not campaigning side by side, because he doesn't really turn on anyone except for the hardcore Republicans who are already with Rubio and Trump.
All right. Well, if we can, before we run out of time, I do want to ask about the Senate debate between Patrick Murphy and Rubio on Wednesday night at Broward College. I was there. You were there. I think, bottom line, I think Marco Rubio had a much better night.
Yeah, the problem that you see with Patrick Murphy is that his campaign is Trump. So Marco Rubio says something, and as he joked, this guy says Trump so much that it's noun, verb, Trump. And Rubio lays out a case of like, here's what I did, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And here's what Patrick Murphy didn't do, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. I'll leave aside the degree to which these guys are shading the truth, because both do. But Rubio makes the case as to why he should be reelected. Murphy makes the case that Donald Trump is on the ballot and Donald Trump sucks.
And
that
Rubio is
doesn't
a
move
much,
people.
he's a much better speaker. He's a much better debater. And Murphy is arguing the wrong thing. His whole campaign, 50% of it should be no show Rubio. And he should ask people.
Well, he says that,
but he's not.
should he
he's not
say it
doesn't
more?
drive it home
He
as
doesn't
a
drive it
message.
home.
Yeah.
You tell people if you had a business with 435 employees and the employee who had the worst possible record of attendance and told you, I don't like this job, I'm frustrated with it, came back to you and said, would you rehire me again? And almost everyone would say, absolutely not. That's the position that Marco Rubio is in, but is making Murphy is running a terrible campaign.
Murphy has a horrible campaign. I don't think that when the Democrats pulled the plug on the money for more campaign ads for him was premature. I agreed that Rubio had him at both debates.
Yeah, well,
and
we
he should
should-
not have.
Making a
He should
big
not.
show
He
here.
should not have agreed to go on the last debate.
Yeah, well, let's point out that Harry Reid has sent in $1 million and another PAC sent in $800,000, so maybe Murphy will have some
They
money.
pulled $16 million of promised spending to him at a time when 36 to 40% of the Florida likely electorate, according to polls, did not know Patrick Murphy.
Yeah.
No ad money, no name ID,
Devastating
no win.
decision. All right, that's going to be the final word. Thank you all. A really lovely debate. And I love your Trump pin, Mary Lee.
Thank
you
you.
very much. All right.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. With the election just days away, people are so wary and so mindful of any ballot fraud, election fraud, and this week they actually had reason to focus on that.
Well, in Miami-Dade County on Friday, 2 women were arrested. One woman was arrested for allegedly filing 17 phony voter registration applications, and the other woman, named Gladys Coego, was arrested for allegedly filling in or bubbling in the name Raquel Votes for Raquel Regalado at the Miami-Dade Elections Department. Here's how I reported it yesterday. 74-year-old Gladys Coego of Westchester was hired as an attempt to open mail-in ballots at the Elections Department. Foolishly and illegally, she voted on at least 4 ballots for Raquel Regalado.
This woman was intent to commit a crime apparently and would conceal a black pen in her purse. And when she had the very limited opportunity, she took the pen from her purse and decided to vote for a candidate race that was left blank intentionally.
Regalado, in court for her lawsuit against Carlos Jimenez, says she doesn't know Coego and disapproves of what she did. These arrest affidavits make a strong case against the two women charged with ballot fraud, and the state attorney says their arrest sends a strong message. 33-year-old Tamika Kergel of Liberty City is also under arrest. Authorities say she submitted voter registration applications for 17 voters who are dead or who didn't want to vote absentee. She was working for a group that supports the medical marijuana amendment. Does this show that, in fact, the system can and does work?
I think that's precisely the message, for everyone to understand that the collaboration between the Department of Elections, their checks and balances, and the coordination with our task force that you know has been in place a long time, it worked.
These two women have already appeared in court. First appearance for them, Tamika Kergel has a $125,000 bond. At last report, we don't know if she posted it. Gladys Coego posted a $10,000 bond, and she is back home.
And up next, the autopsies are released of Marlins pitcher Jose Fernandez and his two friends killed in a boat crash. What those autopsies reveal about the cause of death and a community's expectations. That's next.
Good afternoon, South Florida. On the radar, still tracking those showers, but it's a little drier for Miami-Dade County. Not so much for the Keys, Upper Keys and Middle Keys, dealing with these passing showers moving from east to west. Some of them are heavy. Now for the rest of today, keep the raincoats with you. 82 degrees is the high right now, still in the upper 70s. By tomorrow, we'll start off Monday with clouds early. Then finally, the sun will be returning by later in the afternoon, in time for trick-or-treating on Monday evening, as temperatures only go up to the low 80s starting this new week.
Only the 80s. Jen, thanks. This weekend, this community and 3 families in particular are enduring another round of sudden heartbreak and grief, made all the more painful by the glare of public scrutiny as the autopsies were released of Marlins pitcher Jose Fernandez and his friends killed in that boat crash last month. And especially hard to learn, no doubt, was that the star pitcher, loved and beloved for who he was and what he could do, had been legally drunk with cocaine in his system when his boat, according to authorities, sped recklessly toward that rock jetty near Government Cut in the wee hours of that morning. The headlines that came with those alcohol and drug revelations, including words like stunning and shocking. But many of the same people who wrote those headlines were anything but stunned and shocked. The catastrophic deaths of those young men were shocking. The rest, not so much for anyone who has watched South Florida's fair share of recreational drug culture. Fernandez, as a sports icon, got instant benefit of the doubt, an expectation that he was superhuman in every way when he was clearly simply human, with talents and with flaws and with everything in between. You saw even on day one, a Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission spokesman was quick to defend Fernandez against any thought of alcohol or questionable behavior, even before they began collecting any evidence. Well, those investigators have some explaining to do, but with some facts now public, reality is the deaths of 3 young men is so sad, and so is the way we build celebrities up and take celebrities down with unrealistic expectations. So what do you think? We invite you to weigh in on that or any topic you like.
We are easy to find. Here are the addresses to reach us: email, Facebook, Twitter. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved. Have a great Sunday.
We'll see you next week.